Hey guys, welcome to the Short Term Show special episode series on Shenandoah, Virginia. A couple things I want to hit you with first before we get into the episodes. One, current purchase prices and current income data can be found on our website at theshorttermshop.com. So make sure you check that out because that can change all the time. Also, if you guys want to hang out with us and just talk about short-term rental stuff, you can do that with us and 60,000 of our closest short-term rental investor friends at our Facebook group. Same title as my book, Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and all of our podcasts if you can, because that really helps us out. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Short Term Shop YouTube, and then also follow us on Instagram at The Short Term Shop. And if you're ready to buy a house with us in any of our 20 markets, you can email us at agents@theshorttermshop.com or really any of the avenues that I just gave you. Now let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show, special episode mini series on the Shenandoah market. So really excited to get started here. And I've got a pretty cool panel here to introduce themselves, and I'll let them do that now. Go ahead, Alan.
All right. So I'm Alan Taylor. I work with the Short Term Shop. I'm one of their agents here in the Shenandoah. I've lived here in Virginia for the past decade or so. Really love the Shenandoah area. It's so pretty. And you can reach me at alan@theshorttermshop.com.
Also, he has a great radio voice.
All right. And Lindsay, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure thing. So I'm Lindsay Sievert. I'm a host in the Shenandoah Valley. I currently have 9 listings active, and I've been there for a couple of years. I'm absolutely in love with it, and I'm excited to share with you guys a little bit more about it today.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. So today we are going to be talking about the different, like what to buy here. So different areas, different types of properties, amenities, things like that. So first, let's start with a breakdown of the areas. So talk to me like I have no idea. I've never even looked at this area on a map. I'm brand new, but I heard this might be a great place to invest. So let's break down the areas. Oh, Alan, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, it's getting unmuted here. That makes it a little bit better. So yeah, from a geographic point of view, you're talking about areas to the west, about an hour and a half to 2 hours west of the DC area. So in Virginia, you've got Northern Virginia, which is like Fairfax, Loudoun, and Arlington counties. And then this is to the west. The Shenandoah region encompasses, you got Shenandoah National Park, which just is like 8 or 9 different counties. And then the Shenandoah region kind of is sandwiched in between a couple of different mountain ranges, and it touches, like, mainly the markets are going to be in like Page County, Shenandoah County, Rockingham County, and a couple of the ones that are bordering that area. But a lot of what's going on here is going to be around the resorts that are in Shenandoah County, Page County, and in Rockingham. So those 3 counties are kind of what I'm seeing a lot of properties come up as. There are a couple of other nearby areas that also have little clusters of short-term rentals, but mostly the Shenandoah market is kind of bordering the Shenandoah National Park, and including Page County, Luray, and down in McGaheysville, Massanutten, and even Bryce Resort.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summation. So that's basically central Shenandoah Valley, which is also coincidentally where some of the best hikes are. So that's where the highest peaks are for the whole park. And that's why a lot of people are accessing the park through Thornton Gap, which is it sits behind Luray, and then also the Swiffern Gap entrance to the park, which is the seated by Elkton. So pretty much I recommend people kind of look throughout that area, and then also near those resorts, the Massanutten, the Basie Resort, and all of those. You can go north. It's just the permitting gets tougher. You can also go a little bit east. Permitting gets tougher again. So that's like Madison County, Greene County, and Warren County, Fauquier County.
Okay, so that's actually quite a large area of several counties. Let's talk about the different areas in terms of what types of people are going to each area, or not necessarily what types of people, but are there different things to do in each area that people might be going?
I can speak to that pretty well. So I will say the DC proper folk sometimes are a little bit afraid to drive very far. They're not huge. And this is a very like drive heavy place. So they like to go up north around Front Royal. And that is where Warren County is. It's a little bit tougher for permitting for people looking to buy. But a lot of them do stay up that way. But then a lot of your out of state folks or people who maybe didn't grow up in DC, they're perfectly willing to go that extra 30 minutes to get down into the other counties. In terms of different activities, skiing is the big differentiator between like North, Central, and South, because there's only 2 ski resorts that I know of. There's Boise and Massanutten, but pretty much every other area has some caverns, has some hiking, whether it's, equal hiking in terms of, being a more famous hike. That may or may not exist in certain areas of the park, but they're all there and accessible. So pretty much you can do all the activities, especially since the river and the mountain range follows this entire region. So there are not only, hiking activities, there's also water activities.
Okay. I didn't know there were also water activities. So is there one like central, not necessarily central, but more well-known area than others? So for example, like over in the Smokies, everybody's heard the word Gatlinburg, but they might not have heard the word Wares Valley, but that's a great place to invest also. So is there like a place that is the most well-known that people kind of think, oh, well, it has to be this town, when it doesn't necessarily? Who wants to take that one?
I want to see what Alan says before I say anything.
Yeah, I'll jump in there.
I'm biased.
There's not one central place. This area has so many different attractions. I would say that there's not one central place. If you had to pick one central place, I'd say maybe Luray, just because it's close to so many attractions. You've got Luray Caverns, which is actually a big local attraction. You go there and you're going to see like a 45-minute to hour and a half long line sometimes to get in the door there. And then you've got like Luray is also 15 minutes from, the entrance to Skyline Drive, one of the main thoroughfares through Shenandoah National Park. And you've also got access to the South Fork of the Shenandoah River, which runs right through that valley. So you've got proximity to a lot of different things. But again, like these resorts out here, Bryce Resort, Massanutten Resort, Wintergreen Resort, they're all season resorts. So they've got stuff going on during the wintertime. They've got stuff going on during spring and summer. Obviously wintertime activities, snowboarding, skiing, ice skating, sometimes even in some of these resort activities areas. And yeah, you've got a large variety of stuff. And then there's also vineyards and wineries in the area that, attract people during the off season as well.
Okay. So let's talk about price. Are there any areas that are cheaper, more expensive? Why are they cheaper or more expensive? And in terms of just better places to buy, like what, if I'm, about to buy something, what are you directing?
So yes, there's a variety of pricing and it changes a little bit from place to place. And also in terms of, going and turning around and renting it out, there's also different areas that have different price ranges. So I will say further north, they're typically more expensive. So the Warren County, Fauquier County, I think just because of the proximity to DC, that real estate's more expensive. And then as you go south and then start to wander east, you get closer to Charlottesville. So that actually also increases the property values quite a lot, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the nightly rates are going to be higher. So a lot of the times I would encourage folks to look, don't necessarily think right off the bat, if you're spending $400,000 versus $200,000, that you're going to be making more than the person who bought a $200,000 house. If you're offering similar amenities, you don't even need to necessarily be a similar size. It really is just like how well curated is your listing and your photos and, all of that. Basically, how well are you doing at sales? That's really going to be like the driver of your revenue versus I bought here. This is like the spot. People do like to be close to the park entrances, but I have some that are further out and people still sometimes are a little bit surprised because they don't realize how expansive the area is, as we mentioned. But then they're usually happy anyway.
All right. Well, good to know. So let's talk about different types of properties. So what types of properties typically do the best here? Are we talking about it needs to be like a cabin aesthetic? Can it be another type of single family? Let's start there.
So I'll jump in here really quick. I would say it depends on the area. Like if you're really close to Shenandoah National Park or up on the hills, it does help to have a cabin-looking property in some areas. Like in northern Page County, if you're going to be close to like Rileyville, there's a lot of properties up there that have the log cabin-looking feel. But if you get closer to some of these resorts, like Bryce Resort, Massanutten, you're gonna see houses and rentals that look a lot like what you might find in an urban neighborhood in some cases. Lots of drywall inside, does not even have like look and feel of a cabin in many cases, but it's not going to hurt you either. So having that look and feel for lots of the areas in this, having that log cabin look and feel is going to help you, but it's not a necessary thing. If you have a couple of touches here and there that kind of are suggestive of that, theme, I think you're going to do well. River properties along the South Fork or South or North Fork of the Shenandoah River are again going to be more situationally dependent. Certain communities do have a log cabin looking feel, but some of these are not really what you would call. They don't look as much like a log cabin as what you would find in the Smokies. I'll put it that way. Lindsay, I don't know what you'd say here.
I would second that. There are some of the log cabin look. There's some really big lodges you can rent in the area that are beautiful. And those do drive a lot of folks. But I think they could look different and still have that same size and attract folks, as long as they had a high quality of design and also a view or something else to offer, a nice yard, where your kids can run around or your dogs. A lot of people travel with animals. So I think it's less dependent on, having that log look and more of, did you come in and zhuzh up the house to look nice? You can appeal to the farmhouse look. A lot of houses are throughout the valley, they're not a cabin, but they are very farmhouse-esque, and modern farmhouse is still really hot style for a lot of folks. So people are in love with that, and they'll come and visit there. And those are even some of the houses in town. They don't have a huge yard. They have not a log in sight, but you'll still get people in as long as you cover some of those base amenities. We kind of touched on that a little bit, I think, at some point. But that's where it really becomes important. Do you have what people are looking for?
Awesome. So Alan, I'm gonna pause this real quick. Your earpiece thing is real echoey. So I think maybe if you take it out and just use the whatever's on your computer, I think that might help.
So it's using a different microphone here. I'm just using this for sound here. Let me see if I can change things up.
Oh yeah. Because it's kind of like echoey and kind of going in and out. So yeah, it might just be like a mic configuration thing. Lost you. Change it on the Zoom preference. Because mine will do that and sound like that. Like if I'm using my AirPods as headphones, so I think it's just like a quick fix. Oh, wait. You're muted.
Is this any better?
It is better, but now there's like a lot of background noise, like white noise kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not echoey anymore. What mic are you using?
That was the webcam mic. Now I'm trying to use the headset mic.
Mic. That actually is really good. Talk for a minute.
All right, just testing the sound here. This is from the headphone mic. Is this gonna work?
That's great. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
The other one was like really sensitive or something, I think. But yeah, perfect. So, okay. All right, we will start again. So we just talked about types of properties. All right, so starting again at 10:15, Shay. Okay, so you can have, it doesn't have to be a cabin aesthetic. I know there's like some kind of farmhousey type properties around there. Does that work as long as it's kind of the rustic vibe, or does it really need to be like sort of cabin-esque?
No, it doesn't have to be cabin-esque at all. And farmhouse is actually something you can lean into very heavily. A lot of people still really like that, thanks to, Chip and Joanna really touting that style for a few years. So you can lean into the rustic look or the more modern, clean farmhouse look, and you can sell it well either way. I think it's more of, did you stage it well? Did you get quality photos?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, this is John Denver country. He wrote the song "My Country Roads" about this area, and so the country roads take me home. Yeah, you can lean into the rustic look and do really well out here. And there's lots of space out here. Like and part of this is going to be in like the Virginia Piedmont, so you can get some really good views in like agro-tourism areas and really do well with that.
Okay, awesome. And is everything pretty much single family? Are there townhomes? Are there condos? Or is everything pretty much a single family property?
I would say that's probably also location dependent. So in the resort areas, you're going to find more like condos and stuff like that, ski condos, ski chalets, smaller properties that, seem to do all right. But away from the resorts, I would say it's mostly single family homes is what I'm seeing. Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah, definitely much stronger lean into the single family home. The only exception in the towns would maybe be some of the loft apartments over the storefronts, which are very, very cute, coffee shops, bookstores, that kinds of thing. But aside from that, it's primarily just single family homes.
Okay. And are there a lot of, Alan, you said resort style areas. So are there a lot of areas that have like HOAs and things like that? Or is it mostly like rural, not so much HOA?
So HOA is going to be much more common in the resort areas, like close to Bryce Resort, close to Massanutten, Winter Green. Most of those are going to be in HOAs, and especially if it's like a condo, it's almost a given. That's not always a negative. I would say the HOAs around here can oftentimes make the life of a host a little easier just because they take care of road maintenance, they take care of garbage, all that kind of stuff. And here in Virginia, unless the HOA specifically says you cannot use it as a short-term rental, the Virginia Supreme Court, I think in 2007, said that unless it's specifically prohibited, that you should be able to use it. Now, most of the HOAs around here are pretty friendly to short-term rentals anyways, and you're not going to run into an issue with that. But it's definitely something to be aware of and something you want to keep in mind.
Yeah. You always want to check out the HOA restrictions, period. Even if there are other rentals in the neighborhood, don't just take that at face value. Always check the restrictions. So you mentioned Bryce Resort several times. So for those who aren't familiar with the area, what is that?
So Bryce Resort it's actually really close to West Virginia, the state. It gets kind of confusing because we talk about Western Virginia and then West Virginia, the state. This is actually really close to the border with West Virginia. And it's kind of west of Mount Jackson. And the closest community that they, I guess, would claim is called Basye, Basye. And it's a resort that has like lots of wintertime activities, ski slopes and that kind of thing, mountain biking, downhill biking in the summer. But they've also got, like from some fairly decent golf courses that they built in there. So it attracts a wide variety of people. And they've even got like a little airstrip so people can fly in their small plane to come land there from DC. So it's got a variety of attractions, and they are really leaning in. So they built a new ski lodge this year, the past couple of years, and there's a lot of new builds going in there. So it seems like an area that's kind of just getting discovered and starting to build out a little bit more.
Okay. And are there any other like resort areas like that around? You mentioned a couple ski resorts. So what are those? And if you want to be near the skiing, where are you buying?
So Bryce Resort and Massanutten are probably the ones that are the bigger ones. Winter Green is also an all-season resort, so they do skiing and snowboarding during the wintertime. A lot of these places, even if there's not snow during the snow season, they have snow generators. They'll fire up for that, or snow machines. But yeah, Bryce and Massanutten are probably the bigger ski attractions, and then Winter Green is also, it's not as big as the other ones, but it's also a fairly decent attractor.
One thing I want to add on to that, for Massanutten specifically, if you want to be categorized, if you're Airbnb specific, if you're hosting a lot on Airbnb, as long as you're about 15 to 20 minutes away from the ski resort, your house will pop up on the ski category. So that encompasses like nearby towns like Harrisonburg, McGaheysville, Shenandoah. It might touch Elkton, but definitely Shenandoah. So that's something to keep in mind as well, so that you don't have to be right up in the resort, where you might not love those housing types. They're more neighborhood-esque. They're kind of on top of each other. So if you want something a little bit of a different offering, but still capitalizing on those ski town feel, then you can just go within like 15, 20 minutes.
All right. Awesome. So those are the areas you want to be really for skiing. What about, does that differ if you're more into hiking, or maybe you're coming more for water activities or the caverns? Are there areas that are better for that specifically than others?
Cavern specifically, most people think of Luray, like probably 9.9 out of 10. Luray is definitely the most famous, and that's what people know who are not in the local area. So, I actually have a home on booking.com. So I get international travelers coming in a lot to my Luray home constantly. And I have the feeling that they actually don't love the cabin.
So they don't like the international travelers don't like the cabin aesthetic, you said.
I think that there's a subset of people that I didn't realize existed until I started marketing to them. They maybe want to be in town. They like the comforts of the in town, but they want to be able to explore nature, but leave it at the end of the day.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. So so we talked about caverns, anything water specific?
Yeah, so there are several river outfitter companies that'll, pick you up at one location, give you a little bit of training and set you loose with whatever you've rented, like a kayak, or some people do tubing. And those are really, really popular activities during the summer. You can also do a little bit of fishing. It's not a huge fishing river, but I see people out and about on fishing kayaks and trying to do fly fishing all the time.
All right, cool. A lot of people love fly fishing, and they think you have to go to like Montana or Wyoming to do it, but you can in the Appalachian Mountains. I feel like I get corrected whichever way I say it, so I'm just going to say it both ways. All right, let's move on to amenities. So are there any amenities that you kind of have to have across the board just to be competitive with your neighbors?
Yes, I would highly, highly encourage people to have a hot tub. I think that you will still get bookings throughout most of the year, but you're not going to be able to charge as much. You're not going to be as busy as your neighbors who have hot tubs, and most people do. Fire pits are a close second. I don't think that a fire pit can replace a hot tub, but it's definitely a huge nice to have and something that people are seeking out. And then in terms of any other amenities, if you have a fenced yard or a large enough yard for pets, allowing pets kind of as an amenity is something that people are really looking for. And aside from that, it's more of a location.
Okay. Do you find that properties with views are more attractive to renters than properties without views?
Yes. I would definitely say that properties with views, I think, can command a higher price. I don't know that they're necessarily occupied more, but they definitely, you get that shot that people are looking for, and you're going to be booked steady.
Okay. So if I can get a view, I want to get one, but it's not necessary.
No, I think as long as you can show that the property at least has, either walkable in town or the far opposite, and that it's very much out of town and looks isolated, even if it doesn't have a view, and they're going to have that nice time being alone in the woods or something like that, then they'll be more than happy without the view.
Okay, that makes sense. So you really kind of need to have a hot tub to be on par with everybody else. You want to have a view if you can get it. This is pretty standard mountain market stuff. Let's talk about pools. Are there any properties? Is it common at all to see pools in these properties, or is that something that's really not common?
There are not many rentals in the area, or any houses, period, in the area that have like in-ground or above-ground pools. They're just not very common. And I think I've almost was going to host one with another person who has a pool, and I was very excited to, get my hands wet, pun intended, with that, just because no one's doing it really. But I don't see them.
So that would be a way to kind of create a next level property, is to either find one with a pool or add a pool or something like that, because there's just not any in the market. Okay.
Yeah. Next to none.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that because the aesthetic of properties in this market aren't always the most updated, that if you're an investor who's maybe used to a really, really high volume, high caliber operator market, like say in Orlando or a Scottsdale or a Smokies, where you really have to have a super property. Like it has to be something that's really set apart from the others. Like Orlando's big on theming, now in the Smokies, and then also like in Scottsdale, since I mentioned that, you have to make sure that you're very, very updated. So no laminate countertops, no carpet. Everything has to look very, very nice and new. Would you say that if you took the principles that you've learned from managing a property in those types of markets and moved it over and applied those principles here, that you would kind of be head and shoulders above the rest of the listings?
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. You certainly would be. And in this market, there's still room for that kind of in between. And actually, I'm going to refer to something that I heard you say on a podcast once, that you didn't over improve a property like immediately as soon as you got it because you didn't have the budget at the time. So I think the nice thing about Shenandoah is that if you are that investor who you already have properties in Scottsdale and Miami, and like that's the level that you're at, you can come in and like outplay all of us basically in the Valley because you're going to be swinging with a lot more cash. But if you are a newer investor, it's still a market where you can enter and, have that still like approve the aesthetics, really lean into like whatever the natural aesthetic of the home is, whether it's a cabin or a farmhouse or an old craftsman home in town. Like you lean into that, make it well designed, give them good amenities, but then you don't have to go like above and beyond. Like I have, some ugly kitchens in houses that we just painted and made it at least have a nice color overall in the room. And you can still swing and can be very competitive at that level. So yes, head and shoulders above for sure if you have the budget to do that nice new complete reno feel or new construction. But it is a good rookie market as well.
That's good to know because it is the price point, and we'll talk about this more in a different episode, but the price point there is better than a lot of markets to get into. So that's nice to know if you truly are trying to get in on a budget, that Shenandoah is a place that you can buy a property for less than other comparable markets, but then also not have to just completely gut renovate the whole thing right out of the gate. You can start making some money and get rolling and kind of slowly update as you go to get it to that level that you want it to be, to where you are, playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers in the market. So do we see many properties that have pools here, or is that not a thing whatsoever?
I'm not seeing as many. Yeah, I'm not seeing as many properties with pools. That is kind of a newer thing, and the properties that do have pools they seem to book out pretty well. So it seems like that could be an up and becoming thing. There's a lot of people are going to be trying that. It seems like hot tubs very common, but pools not as common. You're going to find that more commonly in like the Airbnbs that are closer to like a city center, like Luray or Stanley or Shenandoah. You're going to find more properties that might have pools closer in, but up on the hillsides, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to put in a pool, and so it's not as big a thing. And like it's in the Smokies, you're going to find places that have like indoor pools, not so common out here. And if they do have a pool, it's probably going to be an outdoor one, and it's probably going to be in like a neighborhood. But if you have the option to put one in, if there's a property you find that has a pool, definitely don't pass it up. Don't dismiss that just because nobody else has one. That might be a big distinguishing factor for you.
Okay, cool. So there's no pools in this market. So that might be a good way to do something a little bit different from everybody else. So I know we have kind of touched on this already, but are there any other amenities that you either have to be on a level playing field with everyone? I mean, you mentioned hot tub, or anything that we might not be thinking of that you kind of have to bump that income up in this market?
Yeah, so hot tub is necessary. I have, several properties listed and there's one without a hot tub, and you can see it kind of struggling behind all my other properties. So I would say I always encourage, clients when they come to talk to me that hot tub, they're always, if they're on the fence, they're like, oh, I know they're a lot of work and they're really expensive. I'm like, it is so worth it. It will definitely keep you occupied. You may not have like a huge spike in the ADR just because they are so common. So you're going to be about where everyone else is, but it's going to keep you at a higher occupancy. And then I would say another thing is just general nice outdoor space. People come out of the city to come to Shenandoah to have an outdoor experience. So you do need like a nice patio or a fire pit or, some nice outdoor games. A grill is a really big one. Those are all pretty basic, but they're still very essential.
Yeah, I would back that up. I think that's great. That's great feedback there. And I think I would echo what she says, like, the hot tub is very nice, but as far as other amenities, it really is property dependent. Pay attention to where your property is. Like if it's a river property, you can add like kayaks and canoes and stuff like that if you want to, paddle boards.
stuff that they can take out on the river that would be a nice value add for them. And like what you said about like, nice areas like grills. I just looked at this property that had this 3-acre spread right on the Shenandoah River. The house is, built up on the hill away from a floodplain, but they have this like nice screened in patio porch down there, a deck on the river, and lots of space for people to put out, like a shade structure, something like that, to have kind of like a little, family get together. Stuff like that is going to go a long way. And if you can plan your amenities around that, like yard games and stuff like that, definitely pay attention to where you are and build your amenities accordingly. And the people will come.
Yeah, I like that. Build your amenities accordingly for what you've, for the property that you have. Do we see many HOAs around here? Sorry to switch gears kind of quickly, but are most properties not in an HOA? Are there HOAs? Are the HOAs friendly to STR? What does that situation look like?
So I have seen several HOAs. Most of the HOAs, especially in like Page County, are going to be fairly friendly to short-term rentals. It's still something to keep in mind, but Page County is kind of branding itself as the cabin capital of Virginia. So their economy really does depend a lot on tourism, and they're embracing a lot of short-term rental hosts as a result. But do pay attention to that. There are a couple neighborhoods in Page County, particularly, and in other counties nearby that they might have some strange rules about short-term rentals. There's one particular HOA that I'm aware of that has a rule in place that you can only rent for periods of 7 days or longer. And so it looks like they're trying to move towards like midterm or long-term rentals. But if you look in that neighborhood on Airbnb, there are properties there. So it's a risk you have to be aware of. Definitely be aware of that. Look into the HOA documents. Here in Virginia, they are now required to disclose like a 26-point list about HOAs. Definitely go through that with your attorney if necessary. But most HOAs in this area I'm finding are pretty friendly to short-term rentals. So it's not a deal breaker. Lindsay, I don't know if you have input on that.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off a little bit there. So a lot of them in the central area of Shenandoah are pretty friendly to it. If you go further north, the HOAs start to be a little bit less friendly. And I can't speak as much to the south, but I think it's a mix of both. I would say the one thing to keep in mind is that in some of these locations, the HOA is going to restrict you from being able to build an additional unit, where in a lot of places in the Central Valley, especially, you are able to build a second unit on your property if you can perk for it and you have all the proper setbacks. So obviously, anytime you can turn a property from make one income stream into two, we want to do that. So I would keep that in mind, that you may be able to do it according to the county, but the HOA may restrict you further. So you may only have that one rental on that property, even if you have 5 beautiful acres.
So as with anything, always make sure you're doing your due diligence. If it's an HOA, even if it's not in an HOA, make sure there are, like, if it's not an HOA, but it's still a group of cabins, like a neighborhood, there can sometimes be deed restrictions, there's not an HOA, but there are deed restrictions. So it's a different thing. So you want to make sure that you're checking all of those things, because you don't want to ever get caught with, having missed something after closing. So due diligence is always key anywhere you're buying, not just here.
Absolutely.
Are there it's typically everything around here is going to be a single family, right? Do we see condos or townhomes much?
There are condos, but they're closer to the resort area. So we're talking like Bryce Resort, Massanutten Resort, Wintergreen Resort. Those are the all-season resorts. And those are the only places that I have really seen condos that would have any appeal as far as short-term rental goes. Most of them are like built in like the 80s, 70s and 80s. They are just somewhat viable. I mean, they're worth looking at, but I would not say that they are the biggest draw to the areas. Most of the people, like, especially if you're going to like Massanutten Resort, where there are condos, there are also single family homes, and they're nice, and they're well appointed, well designed for short-term rentals. So you're going to be competing against that. It's not to say that they won't rent out. But those are the areas where I'm mostly seeing condos. I'd
also add that in some of the downtown areas, there's commercial buildings that have retail on the first floor and then residential above. And some of those are really, really successful. One that comes to mind is a coffee shop in Luray, has an apartment Airbnb above it that does really well. It's super cute, great location. I wish it was mine. But there's more opportunities like that in some of the historic downtowns as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Leslie. I like the downtown areas. People often look at it as like, well, it's not up in the mountains, or it's not a cabin, or it doesn't have this like mountain view. That's not necessarily a a negative factor here, because you're going to be close to so many things. Like if you're in downtown Luray, you're like 10 minutes drive from Thornton Gap. You're going to be like 15 minutes or 20 minutes to Massanutten and like the indoor outdoor water park there. You're like 10 minutes drive max to the Shenandoah River. So many different things that you're going to be close to, and Luray Caverns right there in town that you're going to be close to. So having a property in downtown is not necessarily a bad thing, because you can still find like a cute, like historic place, or like just a nice niche downtown that would be really attractive to people. So yeah, if you spot an opportunity like that, don't just pass it up because you think it's in downtown.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes there can be some cool opportunities like that. Like this building that I'm in right now is a multi-use. Got my office on the bottom floor. We've got a short-term rental condo upstairs. So those can be that you will need a different kind of financing for those. You'll need commercial usually. And sometimes it can be kind of hard to find. Like even this building that's in a mixed use development, it took me a little time to find a local lender who would do it. So if you find something like that, you're probably going to have to call around a little bit, but definitely don't rule it out just because the first lender says, hey, we don't do that, because they can be really good opportunities. And they can be good opportunities because some investors are too lazy to call until they find a lender that says yes, and they'll just write it off immediately. So you can get good deals that way.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked in the last month and a half, like, hey, why isn't this selling? Why isn't this selling? As though there's like some stigma attached to the property. I'm like, it may just be because somebody else is not willing to do the footwork or the homework to get this, to the point where it would, pencil out. And so don't necessarily look at like the time on market as like something's wrong with the property. The thing that's wrong with the property, maybe it hasn't found the right buyer yet. And if you can find the right financing and you've got a vision for it, this may be the right property for you. And it may be to your advantage that it's been on the market for a long time. So yeah, don't just look at time on the market as like, yeah, there's something wrong with the property. You might be the right answer to that.
Totally agree with that. I like the way you put that. You might be the right answer to that property. That property is waiting for you. Okay, guys. So I think we've pretty much covered everything in terms of what to buy here. Is there anything that you feel like we might not have touched on that the listeners would benefit from hearing?
I can't think of much else. The Shenandoah is just such a huge place. There's going to be so many different kinds. Don't get stuck on like a single buy box. Like don't get stuck on, I just need a cabin in the Shenandoah. Keep your mind open because there's lots of options. I mean, it takes me 3.5 hours to drive from the top of the Shenandoah down to the bottom. And there's different markets all along the way. There's riverfront, there's mountainside, there's the resort, then there's a cute downtown and other stuff. So there's something for everybody here. Don't get stuck on one. Stay open for options and the right one will come to you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Listeners, if you are ready to buy with Alan in Shenandoah, you can email him at alan@theshorttermshop.com. It's ALAN. If you just want to learn more, there's a few ways you can do that. Maybe you're not ready to jump right in yet. You can join our Facebook group. It's called Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, same title as my book. Or we have a weekly live Q&A with myself and Luke. You can sign up for that at strquestions.com. And Luke and I just started 2 new things where you can do a one-on-one with us while we are on a run or a walk. Luke is running. I'm walking because he's the marathoner. I'm just trying to lose the baby weight. But you can sign up to speak to either of us at lukeruns.com, LUKERUNS, or talktoavery.com. Thanks so much, guys. We'll catch you later.